Well, hello everyone. I opted for poor lighting today so that I could sit somewhere different. Well, poor lighting with a computer. But I'm sitting where there's plenty of sunshine and plenty of noise behind me. So let's get to the second part of the Fellowship of the Rings episode so that I can mute myself. And that way you guys can. What am I doing here? Sharing this. It's been a while. It's been a few days since I've done anything. It's been almost a week, it feels like, since I've put anything out. Let me do this so that I can mute the noise behind me a bit. Okay, let's open this. Fellowship of the Spirit. There we go. Here's the second half of that. I hope that you all enjoyed the first half. Here's the second half. Sorry, that was not it. Let me try this.
Welcome back. We are now going to discuss 5, 6, and 7. All right. On page 72 in the book, it says, into action. Having made our personal inventory, what shall we do about it? We've been trying to get a new attitude, a new relationship with our Creator, and to discover the obstacles in our path. We have admitted certain defects. We have ascertained in a rough way what the trouble is. We put our finger on the weak items in our personal inventory. Now these are about to be cast out. Can you imagine? This requires action on our part, which when completed will mean that we have admitted to God, to ourselves, and to another human being the exact nature of our defects. This brings us to the 5th step in the program of recovery mentioned in the preceding chapter. Skipping down, it says, this is perhaps difficult. We will be more reconciled to discussing ourselves with another person when we see good reasons why we should do so. The best reason first. If we skip this vital step, we may not overcome drinking. There's a good reason, right? Time after time, newcomers have tried to keep to themselves certain facts about their lives. Trying to avoid this humbling experience, they've turned to easier methods. Almost invariably, they got drunk. Having persevered with the rest of the program, they wondered why they fell. We think the reason is that they never completed their house cleaning. They took inventory, all right, but hung on to some of the worst items in stock. They only thought that they had lost their egoism and fear. They only thought that they had humbled themselves. But they had not learned enough of humility, fearlessness, and honesty in the sense we find it necessary until they told someone else all their life story. I come from a religion that includes confession. And so I know the value of confessing my faults, my sins. But doing a 5th step in Alcoholics Anonymous was a new breed of cat. Now I'm not going to be talking to a priest with a screen and doing all of that. I'm going to be face to face with somebody and I'm going to spill the beans. I'm going to tell them. And I was so ashamed. I was so ashamed of the way I'd been living. So ashamed of the things that I had done. So I went and sat down, and I sat down with my sponsor at the time to do my 5th step. And he was a defrocked Catholic priest. And he had these 2 blue eyes that could look right through a steel door. He really intimidated me. And he had those eyebrows. You know those guys, sometimes they can really whoop up those eyebrows. He had those eyebrows, right? And I'm going in there, holy moly. I was shaking like a leaf on a fuzzy tree going into that 5th step. It's my first one. And so I started telling him all about it because they told me, you got to dump the whole load, son. You got to go in there and you got to tell the truth. And so I went in and I told the truth. And there were times in there, man, I mean, I can't feel my legs. I can't feel my lips. I am just like disassociating as I'm sitting there doing this 5th step at times. And what happened was I got to rejoin the family of men. I had been so isolated and feeding on myself. And to tell somebody what I had done, what had gone on, who I hated, and then taking responsibility for all this. So my analysis that this inventory was insufficient to get at where it hurts was totally wrong. It got to where it hurt all right, and I couldn't believe it. This guy stayed in the same room with me. Now, I have to tell you, this particular priest, ex-priest, had killed 2 people, vehicular homicide, drunk, out on the road, out of his mind. So it's not like this guy was, Mother Teresa or anybody. But he also didn't run out of that room. And I was afraid he was going to. Not that I'm the worst person that ever lived, but I was carrying this stuff. It turns out I am a very drug sensitive person. I hear people talking about taking all these heavy drugs and stuff. I can't take one antihistamine pill. I'm in bed 8 hours. I feel so sick. I can't even tell you, right? So I'm not Mr. Drug Addict, okay? I was doing immoral acts, insanity, that were the equivalent of me doing all the acid, all the heroin, everything. And I was trying to roll down the road, carrying this load in my soul. I couldn't breathe. I could hardly function. I was out of my mind. So what happened? I truly got the sense that I was coming home, that I got to come home. I got to come back to life. I couldn't believe it. There were things, my life got so cramped. I came into Alcoholics Anonymous, and you guys talked about this stuff like, oh, yeah, I did blah, blah, blah. And I was like semi-horrified. But I also felt consoled because I wasn't alone. I was telling somebody yesterday, when I got sober, we used to have sex meetings, discussion meetings, male and female sex meetings in Alcoholics Anonymous. It is a topic in the big book. Now we're going to have a meeting about sex. Man, I'm in there and I'm feeling like a complete twitch. And people are talking in generous and general enough terms that we can sit in the room together. Nobody's preying on anybody. We're not doing this trick. Because I'm in there, I'm dying behind this. And again, I'm sorry, but I got a loaded gun at home. I'm not kidding you. I'm dying behind this stuff that I'm carrying. So what would happen is afterwards, after the meeting, people would come up to me and then they would share very specifically about how they were being eaten alive by the sexual activity and fantasy in their lives. And since then, I've been in this rodeo for 40 years. I can't tell you how many people, male and female, who are carrying that weight in their lives, and there's no freedom in it. It's like having a shadow self. Do you understand what I'm saying? They got this secret. We got this secret, and we have no freedom. So it's to be able to talk about these things and to unload this. So I came out of that 5th step, and I sat out in my car, and I couldn't remember how to operate it. I was just like, God, it was like the elephant was lifted off my chest. I got a chance to breathe, and I saw it. I thought, oh, man. And I had read this article in National Geographic magazine, and it was about this guy who decided to sail across the Arctic Ocean solo on a sailing ship. He had a bubble on the deck, and he had rods and pulleys so he could operate the sails and everything. And he got into what they call the screaming 60s. And I don't know if the latitudes, what lines or longitudes, I can't remember. But he got into some longitudes or latitudes called the screaming 60s. That means that there were 60-foot swells. 60-foot seas means a 6-story building. And they picked up, and I remember his little craft was called the Ice Bird. And they picked it up, turned it over, and plunged it into the Arctic Ocean, mast first, broke his mast, killed his radio, soaked everything inside. This guy's becalmed in the Arctic Ocean. No way to get out of the deal, and he's bailing. And here was his mantra: I must earn my place in the family of man every day, as he would bail out, not knowing if he was going to die or not. I read that article and I thought, my God, I get a chance to earn my place in the family of man again, to hold my head up, not instant, not overnight. And the book says we don't get sick overnight, and we're not going to get well overnight. But little by little, I got this opportunity because of you, because of the program of Alcoholics Anonymous, to unload that elephant before it killed me. So the fifth step, I'm in there with an ex-priest, but a non-priest, not in a religious ceremony, and I'm telling another human being, brother, here's where it hurts. That's what I got.
After I complete the fifth step, on page 75, it says, once having taken the step withholding nothing, we're delighted for some fifth step promises. It says we can look the world in the eye. We can be alone at perfect peace and ease. Our fears fall from us. Our book also tells us we outgrow fear. We begin to feel the nearness of our Creator, starting to experience oneness with God, which is what Mickey just explained pretty much. We may have had certain spiritual beliefs, but now we begin to have a spiritual experience, the infancy of one perhaps, but it's happening. The feeling that the drink problem has disappeared will often come strongly. We feel that we're on the broad highway walking hand in hand. There's oneness, no separation with the spirit of the universe. And it gives me instructions what to do when I go home. Going into the fifth step, it sets me up as to what I'm looking at, what I'm supposed to do, what this person listening is supposed to do. And nowadays, we pretty much know we have a sponsor. And I sit with folks before, and then I read some things to them out of this book before we get going. And I get prepared because God's about to use me, because it tells me I'm on a life and death errand. It says when we decide to hear our story, we waste no time. I have a written inventory and prepared for a long talk. We explain to our partner or our sponsor what we're about to do and why we have to do it, and they pretty much know why we're there. It says the sponsor, he should or she should realize we're engaged upon a life and death errand. So God is giving the sponsor that kind of responsibility on a life and death errand. Now that makes absolutely no sense in the light of the way we lived. We're alcoholic, we're drunks, we get sober, and God says, I'm going to entrust you with one of my children to bring him from point A to point B. What a responsibility. It's being an agent for God, isn't it? But I can't transmit something I haven't got, and I will what I do, and that can be untreated alcoholism. So I better be spiritually fit. I better have some spiritual muscles here going in, and the total reliance upon God. So when I know I'm going to hear a fifth step, I go into prayer and I go into meditation. Father, just show me what to hear. Let me listen to what they're not telling me. And I always like to watch body language. Just the way I just do it. When we get to sex inventory and they're squirming and crawling around, I know there's more. Who wants to talk about sex inventory? A man to a man talking about those compromising things. And you watch, they start to mumble. I remember when I wrote sex inventory the first time, it was little squibbly, tiny writing. And I was going, And Hopi said, don't worry about it. We don't need to do this part. And I remember my sponsor says, how much shame are you feeling? I says to him, it's uncomfortable. He's go home, write inventory about that. And I got it out. There's a name for it. It's already been done. And so they sit with me. And when we're done with the fifth step, we come out, we talk about this. Those fifth step promises don't necessarily materialize as soon as I'm done with the fifth step. They may materialize in sixth and seventh. It did for me the first time out. But what I do is when I'm hearing a fifth step, I have a notepad and pen in front of me along with a big book. And as they're talking, I'm an instrument here, and I'm going to be inspired to write some things as they're sharing with me. And I'll just write some notes, maybe some defects that I hear. And here we are on page 25, we'll say. And I got writing some things on. I'll stop and say, hey, you were talking about this when you were 10, you're 40. It's the same thing showing up. The players have changed. The states have changed, perhaps. The behavior is the same. And how can I be present if I'm still driven by the past? So that helps them with 6 and 7. And so I listen and I take notes. The other thing and this is what I do, and I set up a rule, but it gets bent, is what I like to do is when I'm sharing inventory with you, it's easy for me to say, well, let me explain this inventory to you, which means I'm going to make me right and you wrong. Resentment Joe, he did this. Let me explain really what happened here. And so let me off the hook. So what I do is I'm assuming that God wrote the inventory for you. And so I don't need your ego now to interrupt that and get in the way. You start explaining the whole thing away. So I tell these men, I don't want you to talk about anything other than what's on paper. I'll stop you, I'll ask questions, and we might sit on inventory for a while. And once we kind of set that up, and then God will determine how the rest of it flows. And I just have to share a quick story. It's my favorite. There was a guy, I was living in Staten Island, and I'll change his name, but I just to call him, we'll call him Joey Loopholes, because nice. He was related to Joey Bag of Donuts, but that's a whole other thing. But this guy, Loopholes, because he was looking for a loophole. He was, no matter what you threw at him, he would listen and find a loop, just look for something to prove me in the book wrong. And so he's in my house. I'm living in Staten Island, and I'm hearing his inventory, and oh my Lord, have mercy. It was, well, yeah, but let me explain to you, but how come this? And yeah, but if they didn't do it, it was just going on and on. I said, let's take a break. I got sweat pouring off of me. My blood pressure's through the roof. And I went into my bathroom. I throw cold water on my face, and I get on my knees, and I go, God, I don't know what to do with this. Guy's going to make me drink by the time we're done. So he said, Father, please, I'm trying to help. I don't know what to do with this guy. I've hit a wall. I get up off my knees. I go to the living room. I sit down at the table. I don't know. Nothing's coming. He's not parting the seas for me until I look at him, and what comes out of my mouth is this. Again, I'll call him Joe. He says, Joe, all I want you to do moving forward is just read your 4th column. I couldn't believe I said that. I don't even know why I said it, but that's what I was inspired to say. He said, yeah, but I can't. I said, no, just your 4th. I don't want to hear anything else. Just keep going. 4th column, turn the page. 4th column, turn the page. And that's what we did. And I have to say that was inspired by God, because somewhere in that, he just kept reading 4th column. I didn't say anything. Flip the page. This guy, if you will, split open in front of me. Everything changed. I didn't get one rebuttal. His whole spirit calmed. His whole being calmed. I saw his eyes for the first time. You know that light when it goes on, you suddenly, oh, there you are. You're here. The body's been here for the longest time. This guy was running around Staten Island with Big Book under his arm, sponsoring guys. His talk, when he would give a talk to me, was a completely different guy. And his relationship, which was in shambles, changed. The guy had a terrible hygiene problem. That disappeared. And he showed up for work, grateful to have a job. Everything changed about this guy, but it happened right at my dining room table when this guy pretty much split wide open. And I was given instructions like that. And I didn't know it. There wasn't an immediate response until I sat down. And you know when words come out and you go, wow, that was pretty good. I didn't even know that. I can't believe I'm saying this, but I realized where it came from. God had to make me open enough to hear that and to trust that. I get home and I'm quiet for an hour, and I really honor this. I don't play with this. I don't go do things and I'll catch up to the hour later, and I'm given some instructions what to do. It's a prayer that I thank God from the bottom of my heart that I know him better. And I say that prayer even if I may not be feeling it at the time. And Bill writes the same thing over and over again. He's coming in from different angles so I can hear at least one thing. And he's pretty much asking me, did you leave anything out? Did you skip over something? As I try to sneak something through the archway that maybe God won't know about. And so that's one of the questions I always ask. Have you left anything out? Anything you want to tell me? And sometimes I get home and say, you know what? I got something. Or they'll remember something. And One other thing, it's not in the book, but I just learned this. It's really, I got this from a therapist, and it seems to work because it's very common with us. I unload everything to you in my fifth step, everything. And you're embracing me and say, good job. And I'm ready to go home for the hour. And I get my car as I'm driving away. I'm going, oh my God, he knows it. Why'd I do that for? This guy knows about those things. Oh my God, he's going to tell everyone. I call it the boomerang. You throw it out and it comes right back and cuts you to ribbons. And I let them be aware that this might happen. And all it is you get now to see your illness in neon lights, how it wants to cut you up. Pay no attention to it. Discount everything the mind tells you. Just go home, be quiet. And when I'm done with those questions, we look at step 6, considerations, which really turns out to be my first step for life here, because these are the things that are left over. A lot of stuff has fell through the screen. Like when you're kind of sifting through and things are falling through, and there's a couple little nuggets that won't fit through the screen. Those defects that beget other defects. It says, if I can answer to my satisfaction, the question's on page 75. It doesn't say the sponsor or the home group, to my satisfaction. This is after that house between me and my God, where I've had a little shift, a little awakening, and maybe a dose of honesty that, yeah, okay, I've been thorough. It asked me, am I ready to let God remove all the things which I consider objectionable? All the things that are no good for me. I'm willing to cut those loose. I don't know where I'm going. I don't know what's going to be made of me, but they got to go. It says, can he now take them all, every one? If I still cling to something I won't let go, I go back to God to have them let go. It says, it uses the word indispensable, which is being absolutely required. Willingness is absolutely required here. I'm at another crossroads. And so if I'm clear on everything, that I've been thorough, I haven't left anything out that I'm consciously aware of, I'm ready to move forward. I don't know what God's going to do with me, but I'm moving. I'm chopping wood and carrying water. I was given an assignment many times that I list defects that were discussed in my inventory. And it doesn't mean it's right on point, but selfishness, dishonesty, greed, the 7 deadly sins, whatever it might be, I list them. And just so I can see, I list the opposite of a defect, just so I get an idea of what I've been doing and perhaps how God really made me. Love, hate love, dishonesty, honesty, things like that. When I'm in a place of be willing to be made new again, my 7-step prayer really becomes an extension of my 3rd-step prayer. It's pretty much doing the same thing again. Again, I'm turning everything back to God. I get to see how many defects were fueled by fear, all of them. How much of me was fueled by fear, all of me. How much self-reliance was involved in my life, all of it. Which leads me to do things and say things that contradicts what he has for me. This thing called free will. Who gave it to me? Me? He did. What a gift. Go live your life. And I blow that up, asset taken to the extreme. So I need to be right-sized again. And the 7-step prayer, I offer things to God, these defects, but knowing what I think is good for me might be bad and vice versa. Some of those things he needs to tweak. Some of those things need to be thrown out, but I can't work on them. All I can do is surrender. And it's up to, with the touch of the master's hand, to do what he's going to do and make me in his likeness, because we got work to do. We got to go to work every day. And the primary purpose, I'm a director. I got a nice fancy job at my treatment center, but I work for him first. Primary purpose at work, my play, whatever I'm doing. In fact, when I'm working or playing, you shouldn't be able to tell the difference. It should all look the same. One movement. I just wear different hats throughout the day. So he needs to tweak me into his liking, into his image, if you will. So I go out and carry the message and not apologize for his name anymore. Even if it's not popular. Not apologize for my big book, even if it's not popular. But shout from the rooftops about this power called God and this book. I'm not that sharp. I can't spot this room and say, oh, they need it, they need it, and they need it. I don't know. It could be the person right in front of me with 30 years sober. So I just need to speak truth. And in order to do that, the false must die, which he's about to do for me. So it's a surrender. And it says, my Creator, I'm now willing right now You should have all of me, good and bad, not for me to determine what's good and bad. I pray. That's a surrender. I'm praying to you to do this for me, that you remove from me every single defective character which stands in the way of what? My usefulness to you and other people, not to make me a circuit speaker or to be a big shot at work or to be popular. It's to do God's work, period, end of story. And what do? I go out and do his bidding. 8 and 9, grow with him in 10 and 11, and go bring this message to others and take this into all my affairs. Now I'm an agent for God. And nothing less than that great fact. So it's more pruning that goes on. Each time through the work, there's more work to be done. I remember I was going through the work, I don't know, it was maybe the 5th time or whatever it was. And I said to my sponsor time, I says, Mark, I don't think I have a lot of names. Things are pretty good. Let's see what God has. 75 names showed up. No force feeding of humility. Where did that come from? Right? All the stuff under the surface. One of the most dangerous things I found is when we become very matter of fact about tragedy. Very matter of fact. We get used to defects. Turn on the news, CNN, we're blowing each other up. It looks like the final days are coming any minute, the way, right? But what do? You go to Fox News, and then the same thing. You go to another killing. You know what? Let's watch Seinfeld. If anyone landed at another planet and they turn on the news and they said, I'm blowing you up and you're blowing me up, they go, hold it, time out. What's going on here? What do you mean somebody was murdered? What do you mean a school got blown? Well, stop, hold it. They would be mortified. What do? We just keep rolling. Same thing with my defects. I'm selfish, I'm self-centered, I'm acting out sexually, I don't pray, I got drunk again. That's my story. Let's see what else is going on. Very dangerous. Very dangerous. This is the first time, really, where we put the brakes on. This has to change. And it comes through a surrender. So that's all I got. Thanks.
Thank you, Peter. So imagine now if we've done all this talking, considering, praying, decision-making. Then we've taken out the pad and pencil and we've listed all this work. We've got reams of inventory written. We've fifth stepped with somebody. We've admitted all this to ourselves, to our God, and to another human being for real. It's out there. It's out there. We've done it. And as solitary self-appraisal it talks about earlier, we could just go write this out. But boy, I'll tell you what, if you noticed, right, and I know you have, the difference between writing it out solo by yourself and then going and telling somebody else, all of a sudden, I'm hearing stuff that I never heard before. It's coming home. Imagine we do all that and there's no 6th and 7th step. Let's just take 6 and for a moment. Let's just take 6 and 7 out of the program. Let's just pull them out. Right? Now I got all this stuff. I got a file drawer full of stuff about Mickey. I got all this written out. What am I to do with it? What do I do with it? Well, Mickey, stop it. Really? That's it? Stop it? I'm the one who created it. How am I going to stop it? 6 and 7 don't have much written about them in the big book. So what we do, and I've seen this happen time again, we go over, let's read the 12 steps and 12 traditions. We're looking for tonnage. We're looking for, I need more words, right? Because there's got to be some mojo going on here, right? There's no mojo. I can't do anything with this. I'm stuck. I got it. It's all over me. And I cannot do anything about it. In all cases, the first step applies. I'm powerless. I can't move this. So we became entirely ready to have God remove these defects of character. Now we're going to put step 6 back. So if a child then, if you've been around children and they've broken a toy and they're coming across the room and they're screaming and crying and they've got the broken toy in their hand, and they're coming to you because they've got this thing that's broken that's important to them, right? And they stand in front of you and they will not let go of the toy. And you're saying, that's okay, honey, just let go of the toy. I'll fix it. And they're holding on to that sucker. Now we throw step 6 out again. Because what I've done is so horrible that I cannot be forgiven, and I will not forgive myself. I can only throw myself on the mercy of the court of heaven. You understand? It's all I can do. I can't fix it. So I'm going to open my hand and I'm going to let it go, Father. Right? Step 6. We're entirely ready. But before we let go of it, let's think about it for a second now. Step 6, we're entirely ready to have God remove these defects of character. Now, what defects of character? The ones that I have conjured up in my life to do business with, to do business from. It is the platform upon which I have stood. This is the way I've manipulated my way through life. This is what has occurred to me as a safe way of getting through. And now it's not like, oh, really? I'm just going to go let go of it? I don't think so. Because if I let go of that, I got nothing. Do you see what I'm saying? I got nothing. I got no way to do business. So it's a more serious consideration than, yes, I admit it's objectionable, and let's just move on. If I let go of this, how am I going to live? How am I going to get through a day? If I don't let go of it, I'm not going to have a day. So it's this and that. It's always this and that. Okay, so I'm entirely ready to have God remove these defects of character. Then I do the next serious thing. I'm going to go into the face of God and I'm going to say, will you please take them away? Will you please take them away? So every time I come to step 7, I'm thinking about this movie, Joe and the Volcano. It's an older movie with Tom Hanks and Meg Ryan. And at one point, Tom Hanks and Meg Ryan are like shipwrecked out on the South Pacific Ocean on these huge steamer trunks that this guy bought. She's passed out, maybe dying, we don't know. And Tom Hanks is there at moonrise in the Pacific. And he's on his knees and the moon begins to come up. And the camera pulls back. Now, Tom Hanks, because he sees this moon, he's awe-stricken with this moon. And so the moon comes up and it's enormous. The camera's back over here. Tom Hanks is now this big. And then the camera comes up close to his face and he looks at the moon and he said, I forgot how big you are. You see what I'm saying? I forgot how big you are. I'm coming and standing in your face and I'm saying, boss, please take this off of me. Right? And then I got to tell you something that's got some bad language in it because I really want you to hear this. They have a line in the 7-step prayer that says, I'm ready that you should have all of me, the good and the bad. I read that line and I thought, wow. This is the only 7-step prayer I could come up with at the time. And again, please forgive me. This was my 7-step prayer. God, I know I'm an asshole. If you got any jobs for an asshole, give them to me. That was it. Some 7-step prayer, huh? I don't mean to offend anyone. I'm just telling you. I'm in my office. I'm standing out, looking out the window, and I just felt crushed. And I was like, they said I could go to you, the good and the bad. I don't have to clean Mickey up to be in your face, to be in your presence. So if you got jobs for somebody who's really broken, please give them to me. I'll go to work for you, but I can't clean my act up. I can't come up with it. You know, this is an amazing weekend. Would you agree? It's a time where we can sit and talk to each other and be in dialogue with each other and say, listen, this is the way it really is. This is the way I hurt. This is the way I feel victory. These are the obstacles that I encounter. And this is what I had a chance to do with them. And I get to be in this room with these really deep.
Now,
In closing, I would like to say that the opinions expressed here were strictly of my own making, or by my guests. Take what you like and leave the rest. You may come to realize that you may not like me or what I want to share. Let's talk to each other, reason things out, but let there be no gossip or criticism of one another. Instead, let the fellowship of ethical human behavior and the serenity from positive human interaction help you grow and chill out, one experience at a time. I would like to thank my higher power for guiding me through this podcast. I hope to spread the message of love, hope, and understanding by touching one life at a time. If you like this podcast, please like and share it. Comments also help other struggling people find it. I am now listener supported, and if you would like to contribute, please feel free. There is no obligation. If you would like to share feedback, you can email me at averagehumanbeing1875@gmail.com. There is also a link you can click if you'd like to send a voice message and add to the content of the show.
Okay, well, there you have it. Let's go back here. Stop sharing screen. Okay, so there you have it. That was the second part. And there was a lot more to that. This was just like one part of it. So I'm going to include the link to my podcast, which has the link to the Fellowship of the Spirit in it. I believe it does. And then if you wanted to find the rest of it, listen like from the beginning to the end. It's pretty awesome. I've listened to it quite a few times and it has helped me tremendously. All right, everyone, take care. See you next time. Bye-bye.